All right, guys. So today I'm joined by the #7 Bellator Light Heavyweight contender, Alex Polizzi, an absolute stud, kind enough to join us on the show today. How's everything going today, man?
Everything's going real good. We're back to training, we're back to working, and just living the dream, punching people in the cage for money.
Are you in Vegas right now?
I am in Vegas. Relocated probably a little more than a year ago. My fiance at the time, wife now, she was finishing up with her school and was looking for a bigger pond to swim in. She's like, there's a couple cities that were on our mind, and one of them was she's like, hey, is Las Vegas good for fighting? And I said, yeah, we should do that one. We should hit that one up.
Yeah, I'd say that one's pretty good, right? How's the weather out there? Because we're in New Jersey over here. It's starting to snow a little bit, man. It's starting to get real rough here. And you know a little bit about that, don't you?
Yeah, back in Wisconsin, man. They've been snowing off and on for probably a month or so now, but Vegas is still pretty nice. Right now there's a little bit of rain out, but usually we're still dealing even in the winter months it's sunny and high of 50s, and it's weird because it's still one of those things where all the people around me are like, "Oh, it's so cold," and they're in winter coats. And I remind myself, like, if I were back in Wisconsin right now, I'd be in shorts and a t-shirt.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you probably look like you stand out of the crowd there, right? You look like somebody
It's
could
sticking
definitely
out like a
pick you out
sore
of a
thumb a
crowd
little
there
bit.
in the cold. Only in the cold can they pick you out of a crowd, right? Like, who's that guy with the short sleeve shirt, man? It's 30 degrees. But anyway, man, I saw a couple of the x-rays after the last fight. It was it a fractured jaw on the foot? Was that what it was?
Yep. Broken jaw. I don't know if they have a specific. They probably got its name for the jawbone itself, but cracked all the way through, and then a minor metatarsal fracture on my fifth, which is like the pinky bone one.
And how do you feel, man? Like as we are here today, right? That fight was what in May. So how are you feeling
Yeah.
now?
Yeah, feeling great. The thing that I tell a lot of people is it's different when you break. I don't want to say this. Like, you know, a lot of people have experienced like broken hands or broken shoulder or broken like foot or lots of those other ones. And those seem, like 6 weeks or so. You're like, okay, I can start to move it now. I can put stuff on it. It took me a long time with the jaw, and I did the whole thing. They wired me up shut. And then after that, they put me in the rubber bands and all that. And I got asked a lot. People say, how does it feel? And with the jaw, it's either not good or good. There's no real like, oh yeah, it's a little, I was doing some stuff and it felt weird. It's like it's either good or it's not. So when I did it, my surgeon initially told me like, you're gonna be moving it around, you're gonna feel like it's fine. Take the extra time. Take the extra time. Make sure that you're not gonna go in back to practice, get punched, and undo all the good work I did.
Yeah, sure. And did they give you sort of a time frame on it, or was it sort of just let's see how this plays out?
She did have a time frame for me set specifically. I mean, like, there were things that she was active in, which is like the wiring shut, and then they wire you shut, then they unwire you, and then they give you rubber bands to keep so it like keeps it closed and keeps it aligned, but like you get to move it then. And that was like another 4 to 5 weeks. And then after that, it was kind of like play it by ear. And she's like, hey, if you could just do me a favor, don't like you could do stuff, feel it, and like you can go back to eating real food, but try not to get socked for another month for I think it was like another 3 months or so. And with the gym I'm at now, it's like, well, I'm gonna get socked, so I might as well I might as well figure out something else to do, hit some pads or something.
And when was it that she told you that you're about 3 months out or so?
So that would have been probably back, probably the end of the summer, August, September is when she told me about 3 months. So, um, but by all the doctors' codes and ethics, you know, sometimes doctors give a little bit longer of a timeline. I'm good to go. So now it's just making sure that I'm getting back into the gym, getting ready to put on another great show for Bellator.
Yeah, for sure. And then speaking of that next fight, right? Because that's always what's so important. That next fight, are we expecting you back at Extreme Couture?
Yeah, we've been practicing extreme couture, and again, I can't speak enough about the level of guys there and the coaches. And really, it's just a great place to be sharpening my craft and continuing to work on my passage as an athlete. So
Yeah. And then, the last time we saw you, right, Bellator 280, Yoel Romero fight, I think you showed a lot of heart, a lot of guts. You stood in there like a true warrior. Maybe things didn't go your way, but I mean, hey, that's fighting, right? When you look back
absolutely.
now, was there anything that that you didn't expect, that threw you off? Yoel's a weird guy to fight, right? He does his weird stuff with his hands. Sometimes he'll just like I saw there's one moment in the fight where he even like froze for like 4 seconds and didn't move. You know what I mean? So I'm
Yep.
sure it's weird, right? What do you think?
It's weird, and I mean, I don't want to say weird, unorthodox.
Sure.
You're never gonna find another fighter like Yoel. And that's kind of what I got told. I got told that he's gonna do some weird stuff. He's gonna do the shell. He's gonna wait and he's gonna wait and he's gonna see when you come in. And he's gonna try to lull you, and then I mean, he's one of the most explosive guys in the game still. And
Sure.
that's what they told me, but um told me on again, I had short notice. And I think the bigger thing, and I've said it before in interviews and stuff, is I'm a guy who I'm better when I don't know a lot about the opponent. I think sometimes that when I get overloaded with that info, then I get out there and I'm thinking about it. And fighting is don't get me wrong, you want to be thinking and you want to be smart and you want to be tactical, but at the same time, like in those little seconds, you can't waste that time thinking about what he's going to do. And I feel like in the past, I've been able to avoid it because, I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm fighting, so and so. And they're like, yeah, oh, that sounds fun, my other fighters. But this time, I say, hey, I'm fighting Yoel Romero. And everybody's got, 2, 3 minutes of advice for me. And I think it just got a little overwhelming for me in that time. And uh, but as far as being surprised by something he was gonna do, not really. I was told by everybody or their mama what is. I mean, and again, a guy like Yoel, everybody knows him. Everybody's seen him. Like I'm not saying that he's easy to read, but the fights are known, and like I can say that he didn't surprise me. I mean, I didn't expect to get my jaw broken either, but
Sure. No, I hear
uh,
you, man. I hear you. He's
yeah,
definitely an unpredictable guy. And regardless of who you're fighting, right? It's MMA, right? Anything can happen in there regardless. Regardless, it's unpredictable.
yeah,
And there's obviously been a long time sort of notion around this guy, right? Like he's terrifying. No one wants to fight him, even dating back to the UFC, right? When you step in there, I mean, he's like that for a reason, right? That means he's actually a very
absolutely.
good competitor. So when you step in there with a guy like that, like how much do you think that does for you? How something like that, whether you win or lose, stepping in there with that guy, getting the time in there, what do you think that does for your career?
Just like every other fight, uh, in losses we find lessons. So I mean, there's stuff that we need to work on, and that specifically against Romero that he highlighted. But I would say that so hold on, I kind of lost track of where we were at.
Yeah, no
Um,
worries, man. No worries. That happens to me
oh,
all the time.
against a guy like Romero.
Yeah,
I've been hearing it since my jaw was wired up. It's like everyone's coming up to me and like, oh, you're tough in there. Oh man, you took that like a champion. And it's like, yeah, being tough is cool, but what's cooler is not getting punched. So yeah, I mean, it's cool that I was able to do it, and that on a short notice like that Bellator would think about your boy to fill in, and it was an awesome experience. Uh, but moving forward, we got to keep an eye on just making sure that we're working on that stuff that we learned, and we're you know making sure that next time when people watch me and people are oh, the Alex Polizzi, he sure can't take a punch. I don't want that one anymore. Is Alex Polizzi? He sure did fight smarter. Oh, Alex Polizzi, moved in there and he really did his damage while not getting his jaw broken in half.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, what's something that I could sort of take away from you reacting to this fight, as we look in hindsight, is it seems like you learned a lot from this fight, right? Like you've taken a lot of lessons in stride. And something I was going to mention that I didn't bring up before the last question was that's interesting what you said, because I've sort of heard fighters say it, but not say it directly, like as clear as you said, that sometimes when you're game planning so much for your other fighter, right? For your opponent, it'll sort of stray you away from your own game plan. So I think, again, that seems to be one of the many things you've learned in this camp. So that's kind of why I brought up the question, because it looks like
Yeah,
it's a fight where you're going to learn a lot. Um,
yeah,
Another thing that I was curious about, right, is you came a few pounds under the weight limit. I'm just curious, is that like a normal thing for you? Because I mean,
yeah,
sometimes people make too much of it, you know what I mean? Without actually
yeah.
knowing the
No,
full stuff. But what do you think?
you know, even from back in my wrestling days, the weight classes, I try not to push myself really too far. My walking around weight, I'm still, 220s or so, but from what I hear, some of the other light heavyweights, they're walking around 230, 240. Meanwhile, I just, I understand it. And if it works for you guys, great. But my thought process behind it is that I'd rather stay one weight class above and not have to worry so much about the cut because I want to be focused on the fight. I'm sure you've heard that from a lot of other fighters too. We're focusing on the fight. The cut comes easy, but
I wish I heard it
it,
from more fighters, to be honest with
it
you. I don't even think
that's
that's a bad approach, dude. I really don't.
and again, if everybody thought like that, oh cool, now you don't have to worry about people missing weight, fights getting scrapped, but it's always going to come to somebody who's, in between and they're like, well, now I can cut and they cut down. So then they push the other guys that were comfortable there to come down. And I mean, I was I was discussing this with somebody about again wrestling weight classes, but it's a similar deal. And what exactly the solution would be it, I don't have it because as athletes we're all at this high level competing against one another and everybody's got to try for every straw they can grasp to get that advantage. So I
Mhm.
I really don't see a way to make the weight cutting problem become less of an issue.
Yeah, I mean, it blows my mind that it's a normal for fighters to have to dehydrate their bodies just literally hours before the night that they fight. Some to near death experiences, literally hours. But like it blows my mind that that's normal.
Yeah, it's really bizarre that I mean, it's normalized, and especially if you're in fighting or if you're in another sport where it's common, but it's it's always a little funny. One of my friends, my friends from high school, she's in a field in therapy where they deal with eating disorders. It's always funny whenever we get together because she's like, I'm like, oh yeah, I can't eat that. I'm losing some weight. And she'll look at me and be like, Alex, that's an eating disorder. You can't
Yeah,
you can't say that to me.
yeah, that's funny, man. So listen, back to the future, right? Again, always the most important stuff, right? What do you think is next for you, right? You're obviously well in the thick of the light heavyweight division, right? The rankings. What do you see on the horizon for yourself? You want to get in there back with another ranked guy? You want to just get anyone in there again just to get back on track? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling the latter. I mean, it's been a while. But before Romero, I was having a pretty active year and running up,
Yeah,
and
you were.
yeah, and then stuff happens and you get put out for a bit. It's been a little while and I'm ready to get out of the house to stretch my legs, and whether that's against, another ranked guy or somebody coming up, I feel like I need to get in there and show you guys what I've been working on, that I'm back and maybe not ready to show that the jaw is stronger, but if it comes to that, again, I'm hoping to move my head out of the way before you gotta say I'm tougher than a junkyard dog again. But I'm just excited to get back into the cage and get back to, like I said, doing what I do.
100%, man. And you've already tasted some of the top tier quality of that division, right? You look at that division, you got Nemkov, Anderson, Bader, Yoel, the list goes on. What do you think? Because I like asking fighters this when I think they're in a big weight class. What do you think of your division, 205, the Bellator weight class, compared to, like, let's say other promotions, the 205 divisions? What do you think? Because I think you guys are pretty loaded.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like there's a ton of guys in our division and the weight class that are just monsters. And you know, we can talk division versus division all day, and like there's a lot of people that already do, but it's I think I like to think about it is it's not, like, oh, this whole thing is better. There's killers everywhere, man, and we're all at the top. We're all, again, everybody's competing, and it's a sport that's, not easy. So the guys that are in it want in it. And I think that with that, everybody's, trying to find a league or division or following what's going to be most successful for them. And so I think that stacked up, there's murderers everywhere. And I think light heavyweight just in general is a weight class that's a lot of fun because you're almost a heavyweight size, but you still got some guys that are in there that can move, and you're not going to see just throwing hands and a lot of interesting technique.
Yeah,
Man,
100%.
now I'm excited. I want to get back out there and fight. Right, it's Sunday night. I can't.
Yeah, Sunday's a chill day, right? You kind of
Yeah,
gotta.
Sunday you got to chill. You got to bring it
Yeah,
down.
yeah, yeah. Maybe tomorrow you kind of, you know what I'm saying?
Maybe tomorrow we'll bring it back up.
Yeah,
I'll
exactly.
I'll I'll, I'll remember what we're talking about today, and I'll get hyped up again.
Exactly, man. So listen, I just listed some great names in your weight class. Like, is there anyone that you look at specifically and say, maybe down the road someday, that would be, that'd be a fun fight for the fans?
You know, I've gotten to since I made this move to Vegas and Extreme Couture, I've actually gotten to experience a lot other light heavyweights, uh, even some of the names that you shared, as well
Corey.
as guys in other organizations that start with U, and maybe P, and maybe some of those one guys. But either other than that, uh, I think that specifically, I'm always kind of a guy who's just, I don't know, I'll fight whoever. Um, there's always been a little thought about fighting Corey, and I say that just because um we're from the same area. I don't know if you knew,
Yeah.
but yeah, Corey's from Rockford, and I'm from, so we're like right there on the state line. And I always thought that it might be interesting for especially some people back home. I used to wrestle across the border for their kids club where Corey went to high school and was around. And so, like, even the same people that don't follow MMA, they just follow wrestling. If they saw, wait, is that Corey Anderson versus Alex Polizzi? I know those two kids. I coach those guys. And
Yeah,
so I thought that might be me.
definitely. You guys have trained together, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Not too much though, right? Not enough.
Not too much, and maybe not so much now in MMA. I think it was actually I probably would have met him back when I was a middle school wrestler and he was in high school. And he probably saw me and I was like, let's wrestle. And he probably just whooped me.
Yeah.
Just showed me a blast double leg and was like, all right, get out of here, kid.
I mean, what's your stance on that kind of stuff, right? Like, let's say you're training with somebody in your gym or whatever or maybe you don't train with them that much, but somebody's from your gym. I mean, do you sort of maybe try to distance yourself a little bit, or you sort of like what's a strategy, or do you just not care?
You know, um, it's only become a recent kind of problem of mine.
Sure.
Before I was at Chosen Few, and while we do have a couple guys that are out there, Mark Lemminger actually fought, in this past Bellator card,
Yeah, we've had him on the
teammate of
show
mine.
before. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, but like Mark and Dante, but like we were never in the same weight classes, so it was never a big deal for me. Um, Now, again, there's a lot more guys that
Right.
are
You're
just,
only going to get better too, so it might,
yeah,
you know.
there's a lot more guys at Extreme that are doing it. Dealing with it going forward, I've told people all the time that it's easy for fans to get caught up in like, oh, that's his personal stuff, or oh, but I try to really separate it. Like fighting is business to me. This is my livelihood, business, and if there's another guy, he's business.
Right.
So I'll try not to bring that into the training room along with me. Like we're doing a business transaction when we get out there into the Bellator cage. It's a business transaction right now when we're here in the gym training. Like it's
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
you got to be able to compartmentalize this thing.
Yeah, I hear you, man. And I just ask because sometimes, it could be somewhat of a different situation, right? And I just was curious to see if you're ready for it because I feel like the better you get, the more those things tend to sort of pop up. I feel like. So listen, man, we spoke about the progression and all that a little bit. You're 30 years old, right? More or less on a scale of like 1 to 10. Off the top of your head, you don't have to give me an exact number. I'm not expecting one because I'm kind of putting you on the spot here. But where do you feel you're at? As far as how far along are you to being the best version of yourself on a scale of 1 to 10? Where do you think you're at right now?
That's a real heavy question if we take it broad. If like a scale of 1 to 10, if I'm fulfilling my maximum potential as a person,
Strictly as a fighter, but I mean,
as
as
a
a person,
as
if
a
you want to
fighter, I
go
can
there,
answer
yeah.
it a little bit better.
Yeah, I was talking about as a fighter, 100%. Sorry if I didn't make that clear, my man. Yeah, my
As
bad.
a person, I was like, oh man, I gotta talk to my astrologist, and we gotta.
Sure. That's a very deep question, I would say. You're right about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, no, no. Just strictly as a fighter. We're talking MMA here, man.
As a fighter, if I was gonna bring it to a number, Bellator has already done it with 7. Not bad. I like to think that and I'm just like every other fighter out there. Like, there's always room for improvement.
Sure.
So if I was gonna say a number, probably mid 6, maybe. I think there's a lot of good things that we can work on, and when I start getting to that next level, when I start making it to that next number, um, as we're moving along and as competition increases, and as I notice more things about my game as it evolves, I think there might be some decimals in there. We're going to get to 8.7. We're going to get to 8.92.
Yeah.
And we're just going to keep trying to improve and become the best fighter that we can be eventually.
Yeah,
I don't know
100%.
if 10's out there, but I'm going to keep reaching for him.
Sure, man. 9.9 at least, right? I mean, I guess maybe 10 doesn't exist, but and I'm sorry to put you on the spot there, by the way. I know it's kind of a tricky question to ask a fighter that, right? Just, what are you going to be on a scale of 1 to 10? But I'm kind of curious to hear these things because myself am not a fighter. I could dream of being a fighter. I could play the UFC game, but I can only see this through the eyes of the people I talk to, kind of like yourself. And I'm curious, man. I'm curious. I'm curious to
Hey man, it's never too late. There's training gyms popping up all over the place. You could hop in there. And now I don't know if you're going to be on
You
the
know
Ultimate
what?
Fighter anytime
It's just
soon,
not
but
for me, to be honest. Getting punched in the face ain't for me. And I'm 25 too, to be honest. I think so, I feel like it's kind of too late for me anyway. When did you start training MMA?
I started training MMA probably this was after college. So it was 22, man.
Damn, okay. So you're giving me some, man.
And it's not too
Should
far
I start
off.
buying the gloves and
Look,
everything?
look. I understand the face punching thing. If you're not into that, it's
Yeah,
kind of hard. It's a hard sell, but there's other things where you don't get punched in the face. You can try jujitsu,
sure. Yeah, but I
roll
don't want
around
to
a
get a
little
limb
bit.
broken either, though. I just don't want to get injured, man. I don't know. Is there one where I won't get hurt? Is there a martial art where I will sign up? I mean, I don't know. Wing Chun
Martial
is
art where
there?
you don't get hurt. Oh man,
I don't think so. Capoeira, maybe? Just
capoeira
dance
looks like a lot of
around. You
fun.
know what I
Yeah, you
mean?
do a little bit of just to
Yeah.
get some rhythm in there.
But I'm not a good dancer, man. So you know what I mean? It's just not gonna work out. It's not gonna work out.
Well, you'll find something, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. So we do appreciate the time, man. I got a few more questions for you. I saw you pulling off some of the borderline WWE slams in a couple of your fights, man. I'm curious. I think I saw you attend even a WWE event if I saw on your Instagram, if I'm not mistaken. You know, are you a fan of WWE and is that stuff you practice in the gym? Feel free to take this question as serious as you like.
Yeah. So I wasn't the biggest MMA fan. I mean, sorry. I've always been a big fan of fighting. I wasn't the big fan of the WWE, the professional wrestling, until I had a buddy of mine who was really into it when I was doing high school wrestling, and we were on a traveling team together, and he's really into it, and he's he was our heavyweight, so he's a bigger guy, and he's not just a really good wrestler, but he's also just a funny person. Sometimes you can go into a party and you can see like, man, this guy's just the life of the party, or knows how to tell a story, or he's this and that. And I mean, like, he had all that kind of charisma, and he wrestled through college, and he was trying the Olympic team, and like a lot of us were, you know, just trying to wrestle because that's what we were good at. And he actually successfully made it into professional wrestling. He's if you ever follow uh Otis Dozer.
Yeah, I know who Otis is. So you were
Yeah,
friends with Otis?
he's a buddy of mine from
Awesome, man.
from Wisconsin. Yeah. So and now every time I'm walking by and it's on TV, I'm like, oh shit, let's see if Otis is smacking down on there.
You know what's funny is before we wrap up here, it's actually ironic that we're talking here because I think a couple months ago something popped up on YouTube of like Otis's like love story with like some other female
Yeah.
superstar, and so it's kind of a coincidence, man, that this has come up again. Honestly, I didn't think it would, but that's funny, man. Otis is funny. I'm not a big WWE guy, but to be honest, the stuff that I've seen, he seems to bring like something good there, something that they lack. I feel like
Yeah. And I mean, like, and again, I mean, if you've seen him, dude is immense.
he's a big guy.
WWE, I think they have him billed at like 350, but like,
He was like a defensive lineman, like a D
he's
tackle.
huge. He's the strongest person I've ever encountered. And with that, I'll transition to some of the wrestling stuff that I've been doing in my matches. Um, I don't like slamming guys like that in practice. Typically, I just go for the pickup and I say, "Hey, I got you," and they go, "Okay, put me down."
Yeah.
But but yeah, a lot of those same wrestling moves. I'm not doing it to put on a show. I'm doing it because
Sure.
I'm good at the move. I know how to hit it. I've done it in practice, and two, um, just like I've said before, I think that all too often in wrestling, all too often in MMA, we see wrestling and it's just, oh, it's the takedown, and I was just gonna keep control. Versus when I wrestle, I'm always trying to do damage. So if I can get a takedown and pick the guy up and maybe make him breathe a little heavier, knock the wind out of him a little bit, or make him bang onto his shoulder, I'm always going for more damage.
A couple more questions here before we wrap up. The name Easy, right? The nickname. Where'd you get that from? Does that just rhyme with your last name? It sounds cool. Or is there actually a meaning behind it? What's going on there?
If you want the full analysis of how it works, you'd have to talk to another fighter by the name of Alex Gilpin, um, PFL guy who is at Chosen Few Gym and still around. But
Perhaps we will.
yeah, I was just starting out and trying to get my hand at MMA versus wrestling, and I think it was after my first amateur fight, I came back into practice. He's like, "Dang, Polizzi made that look easy," and so from there, that's just kind of the way that names develop.
That's funny, man. Some of these names, I like to ask because some of these names come from like the weirdest, the coolest, or just the craziest stories, kind of the whole spectrum. So it's kind of interesting to ask. And then the last question is, sheesh, what was I going to ask you last, man? The temporary tattoos. When did that become a thing? Because I think it's kind of funny, man. It's kind of unique.
Yeah, I think that actually started about my second amateur fight. I just remember, you know, 22, and I mean, like, even in the wrestling community, like, a lot of guys get tatted up because you know we're young um guys who are all amped up on adrenaline, and we're like, yeah, we need to get tattoos. I never had one, never had a real one, just never came up. And then now I'm in fighting where there was even more guys that were had even more tats, and I thought, I feel like I'm getting left out. And so I started sticking a couple on, and then people were calling me out and were like, "Wait, I thought you had like a big face tattoo on." And I was like, "No, no." And then since then, it's just been kind of funny to,
I will say I've been victim to that. Like you've thrown me off before. I can't lie, but that's okay.
yeah.
Do you have any real tattoos? Or
I
are they
actually
all just fake? Temporary, not fake. There you go.
temporary,
Yeah, yeah,
temporary is the
exactly.
word.
Yep. Sorry.
Um, you know, I'll be honest. Yeah, none of them are true. None of them are right. None of them are permanent. Um, and that was a thing up until this past October, and I have one real one now, and it's the ring one. So
100%, man. And I like to get you guys on because I am a fan of the people I speak to. I'm a fan of the sport. Do you have any last message for us fans as we see what lies ahead in the future for you? Any last message you want to tell the fans out there?
yeah, anyone hanging around in this day and age when fads can come and go for weeks, and meanwhile your boy's been wired shut and kind of kicked out of the world of fighting for about 6 months. You guys are still tuning in. Just thankful you're here. I like putting on fights for you guys, and like I've said, it's just something that I'm good at, that they managed to work my way in to get paid for, and it means a lot that people are out here watching me, supporting me, and you know, mentioning how good I looked in a match in the past, or maybe even willing to say, "Oh yeah, I watched the Romero fight. He sure was tough." Um, so yeah, to the fans, just thanks for keeping up, and hopefully I'll be back at it, putting on a good show for you guys soon.
All right, guys, there you have it. Listen, thanks for joining the show. Thanks for giving us the time. Thanks for sharing a little bit about, the personal life, things like that, a little bit of insight into the fights. You kind of gave us the full spectrum here. We appreciate that. We appreciate the time again. And all the best, man. We're looking forward to your future.